Michigan spring game this weekend, so let's head to Ann Arbor. Sharon Moore and his staff have a few big names on campus. We'll start here with defensive lineman Nate Marshall, the number one player in the state of Illinois. It seems like this is a Michigan versus teams in the South battle. Who you got?
I'm not exactly sure who I've zeroed in on as number one. I know Miami and Auburn have done a fantastic job in this recruitment. He's looking at a few others, including Illinois, where there's some family ties, but Michigan, anytime I've talked to him about the Wolverines, he always points to the great tradition, the culture, and the coaching, the intensity. He's talked about how ferocious they've played on defense and how they get after it. And he's been to some games in Ann Arbor before and talks about it being a crazy experience. And he just loves the toughness of the program. And again, the tradition and atmosphere. He sees himself fitting in Ann Arbor. So there's no doubt that Michigan's also one of the teams that has a great shot to land him.
But does Michigan have the NIL strength to stay in this battle until the end?
Well, I think if you look at the way some of Michigan's players, some of their top players on their roster have been compensated, you can point to that and say these guys have made healthy sums of money. And you can also point and say Aiden Hutchinson's one of the up-and-coming faces in the NFL. So they got some ammunition in their bag. And Nathaniel Marshall, he comes from a really good family. His mom's in the DePaul Basketball Hall of Fame. She played in the WNBA. His grandfather played in the NBA for a long time. I don't necessarily know if NIL is the motivating factor in this recruitment. Now, I was talking to a high-profile offensive line coach earlier this morning that said recruitment start out that way, but at the end of most of them, NIL does become a major factor, and some of these kids just don't know it when they get into the process. But I do think that Michigan and the way that their current players are compensated is something that they could point to if that's something that becomes a factor in this recruitment.
All right, wide receiver Derek Meadows, he's coming in from Las Vegas. He's our number 7 ranked wide receiver in the country. He's been taking a lot of trips. What does Michigan need to do this weekend to stand out?
Well, Ron Bellamy, their receivers coach, is really becoming one of the more exciting receiver coach recruiters in the country, builds authentic relationships with top targets and their families, and they got Michigan in the middle of this one. This is one where Notre Dame was considered the front runner coming into the spring. Generally, if you're a Notre Dame type kid, you're also a Michigan type kid, so right. He's going to like a lot of things that he sees on the Maize and Blue campus, but these SEC programs are definitely climbing the ladder. Alabama, a visit to the Crimson Tide campus was a big needle mover. Talked to a source that said that he really loved his time around Kirby Smart when he was on the Georgia campus, and certainly what Georgia's done is exciting. And then LSU, their top class, potentially playing with Bryce Underwood, is something of intrigue. And then Tennessee also had a good visit with them. So it's Michigan's turn. We'll see what they do with the serve.
All right, interior offensive lineman Avery Gash. He's been to Ann Arbor a bunch this offseason. It kind of feels like this one. Are you putting Avery Gash on commit watch this weekend?
Well, I think that he is the best bet to commit to Michigan this weekend of all the visitors on campus. I think that if something were to happen, he would do some sort of announcement at his high school. But he's been to Michigan's campus like 13 or 14 times. He may be the one that gives like Derek Meadows his tour this weekend. That's how often he's been on campus. But he loves the way they play on the offensive line. He talks about how historically they've been good there. He's got a good relationship with Grant Newsome, but Sharon Moore, the new head coach, has been the lead recruiter for him from the beginning. So he's a priority for them. They're in on some of the best offensive linemen in the country, but I think they ultimately get it done for Avery Gash, who's also looked strongly at Ohio State and Michigan State, among others.
Yeah, those are some of the big 2025 recruits that'll be on campus. What are you hearing, though, about new Michigan defensive line coach Lou Esposito as a recruiter?
Well, I've known sweet Lou Esposito for a long time, man, and he builds great, authentic relationships with prospects. I know I said that about Ron Bellamy, but he is excited to be at a place like Michigan where that logo is powerful. He's ready to get into and mix it up with some of the best prospects in the country. I think he'll be a good ambassador for the Wolverines. He's someone that fits that coaching staff and that culture that they had under Coach Harbaugh as they transition into Coach Moore. And I think he'll get on the right kind of kids, and he'll be a factor. He'll be someone that is staying on top of the phone calls and staying on top of recruits. It's something that he enjoys, and he's got a terrific personality. So from a recruiting standpoint, he was a good pickup for Michigan.
All right. Last question I got for you regarding Michigan. Sitting at like 23 right now in the recruiting rankings coming off this national title. And I know we got a long way until National Signing Day, but real quick, when the dust settles, where do you think Michigan's recruiting class finishes? Are we looking at a top 15, top 10? What can Michigan fans expect coming off of a national championship?
Well, generally they finish in the top 15, so I'm going to say that's probably the window that they'll finish in. But the recruiting rankings don't apply as much to Michigan as maybe they do for other schools with the track record of player development that they've had. Now, there's a lot of new question marks at Michigan, right? New head coach, new strength coach. They had arguably the best strength coach in the country. They've had arguably the best defensive coordinator in the country over the last couple of years, from McDonald to Minter. And so new young offensive coordinator too. So there's certainly a lot of question marks around Michigan. So we'll see how these young but deserving coaches thrive in their new role. That's kind of what I'm looking at with Michigan, because their secret sauce was player development and scheme, getting guys in at 18 years old and making them ferocious in the weight room, having great nutrition, and then on the field, scheming them into great positions to make plays, whether that was on offense or defense. Obviously, they developed offensive linemen at a high rate, and if you turn on the Alabama game and the way they played in the playoffs, defensively, how they were able to be a step ahead. And those are the things I'm looking at with Michigan. I'm not caught up in recruiting rankings right now with the Wolverines. They'll sign a solid class. It's about what they're going to do with them compared to the previous regime, which did an unbelievable job, obviously.
Yeah, I agree. And Michigan fans, tap in with me. Talk to me. Where do you guys think Michigan finishes? Comment section below.